Helen McDonald is the program director for the Admiral Nimitz Museum and the National Museum of the Pacific War, located in Fredericksburg, Texas. Come along and join us as Helen shares some of her most memorable experiences during her 28 years working for the Nimitz Foundation, as well as some of the cool things to see and do at the museums. Helen McDonald. Helen McDonald, the program director at the Admiral Nimitz Museum and the Foundation, and it's a lot more than just that, isn't it?
It's the National Museum of the Pacific War, and who would think of it here in Fredericksburg, Texas, Central Texas?
Tell us about it. It's just a phenomenal discovery. This is a world-class destination museum.
I know it's the best kept secret, I think, in the U.S. We're really very proud of it. World-class exhibits. We have objects that are actually from specific battles related to individuals that we're aware of and have interviewed. It helps bring it all alive. We're really very blessed.
And I think that, as you were talking about earlier, the double blessing is that you have had the incredible good fortune to have survivors from both sides of World War II come here and meet and talk.
Yes. We started when there were still a lot of World War II veterans that were still alive. They were able to come from Japan and the United States and Australia. People like Saburo Sakai, one of Japan's leading aces, met with Sam Gracio, who was flying P-40s off of Clark Field in the Philippines on December 8th, which was December 7th over the date line. Sam was shot down by Saburo Sakai, and I wasn't sure Sam would want to meet with the fellow that put him into the infantry, because he really liked being a pilot. But they were inseparable, and when I called Sam to ask him, I said, Saburo Sakai would like to meet with you, is that agreeable? And he said, Helen, can you really do that? And I said, yes, if you want it. And he said, yes, I really do. And the two of them were so dear. They were inspirations to everyone who was around them over that weekend. It was exciting to see.
That is so cool.
Yeah. And then from the Los Angeles area, we had Steve Weiner, who was a banker from the Los Angeles area. But on December 7th, and December 8th, he was stationed at Bellows Field when they captured the very first POW, who was Kazuo Sakamaki, the commander of the HA-19, one of the 5 midget subs that went in that morning. They saw him swimming from the sub to shore, and he had a gunny sack go over his head immediately. He was taken to then First Lieutenant Weiner and was interrogated. Those two met, and I remember Steve said, I would not have recognized you. They both had changed after 50 years. And he said, do you remember me? I gave you a hard-boiled egg. And Mr. Sakamaki said, and whiskey? And so he did remember, and he says, yes, a whiskey, because he was freezing, from being in the water. And those two were very close. General Ken Taylor met with Zenjay Abe. Taylor and Welch, these two flyers, were the two that got up and were so successful in shooting down several of the VALs in the second wave off the Akagi, which was being led by Zenjay Abe. And Mr. Abe said, I'm very glad I was leading the group and not in the rear where they were being shot down. So, but those two were friends, and we've had numerous reunions like that have just been so inspiring.
The different areas of the museum that you find most poignant and touching.
First, as you enter and you learn about the relationship between China and Japan and the United States from the 1800s on, and how that relationship built up as we got closer to the war. And then you go in and you see that midget sub and learn about the attack on Pearl Harbor and experience that. I remember the stories from Mr. Sakamaki when he was talking about how the temperatures inside reached high temperatures and 130 degrees, and they had noxious fumes, and he had to go up into that conning area to breathe fresh air, and it just seemed like such a horrific experience. The gyro compass didn't work. They got stuck in the net at Pearl Harbor and finally got out of that, only to run aground. And it comes back to me is reunion with that submarine in 1991 and all. I can hear their voices as I go through, and especially with all of those recorded oral histories when you get the vignettes of their stories, it really just brings it to life.
Tell us about some of the larger objects that you have here. I mean, the story about your PT boat coming here is incredible.
Oh, yes. That PT boat was wonderful, and when we found it, it was in Long Island, New York. This one had not had the hull altered at all. Most of them, they'd been shortened or altered in some way. This one, it was still intact. PT 309.
And then outside in the grounds around the museum, there's anti-aircraft guns. Tell us about some of the wonderful items that you have.
Among the items that we acquired is a pilot house, a command information center, 5-inch deck guns, the torpedo mounts that we have out in front.
Helen, I wish we could go on, but we're out of time. This has been wonderful.
It's my pleasure and privilege. Thank you.
For further information about the museums,
www.pacificwarmuseum.org.
Awesome. We've been speaking with Helen McDonald, the program director at the Admiral Nimitz Foundation. Reporting from Fredericksburg, Texas, this is your host, Tom Wilmer.